to his wife, bringing a young goat as a gift. But when he arrived at her father's house, the father stopped him at the door. "I was so sure you hated her," the man said, "that I gave her to your companion. But her younger sister is more attractive. Take her instead." The words hit Samson like a blow. Not just rejection, replacement. His wife, given to another man, his friend, one of the 30 who had betrayed him with the riddle. And something inside Samson snapped. "This time I have a right to get even with the Philistines," he said. "I will really harm them." He went out and caught 300 foxes. He tied them in pairs by their tails and fastened torches between each pair. Then he lit the torches and released them into the Philistine fields. The foxes ran in panic, spreading fire everywhere they went. The wheat fields burned. The vineyards turned to ash. The olive groves, symbols of prosperity and peace, were consumed by flames. The Philistines lost everything: their harvest, their livelihood, their future. When they discovered it was Samson who had done this, because his wife had been given to another, they didn't retaliate against him. They retaliated against her. They went to her father's house and burned them both alive. When Samson heard what they had done, grief collided with rage. The woman he had wanted, the woman who had betrayed him, was now dead because of him. He attacked the Philistines with such ferocity that the Bible simply says he slaughtered many of them. Then he fled to a cave in the rock of Etam, hiding from the consequences of his own fury. When anger becomes your master, your victories turn to ashes. Samson had wanted revenge. He got it, but the cost was a trail of death that included the very person he once desired. And the worst part, he was more isolated than ever, alone in a cave, hunted, hated by his enemies and misunderstood by his own people. The deliverer had become the destroyer. The Philistines weren't going to let Samson hide. They marched into Judah with their armies, demanding that Israel hand over the man who had caused so much destruction. And here's where the story takes a heartbreaking turn. 3,000 men of Judah, Samson's own people, went to the cave where he was hiding. Not to protect him, not to stand with him, but to bind him and hand him over to the enemy. "Don't you realize the Philistines are ruling over us?" they said. "What have you done to us?" Samson looked at them, the very people he was called to deliver. And they were treating him like the problem. "I merely did to them what they did to me," he replied. But they didn't care about justice. They cared about survival, about keeping the peace, about not rocking the boat. "We've come to tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines," they said. Samson made them promise only one thing: "Swear to me that you won't kill me yourselves." They agreed. They bound him with 2 new ropes and led him out of the cave like a criminal. When the Philistines saw him approaching, they shouted in triumph. Their enemy, captured, bound, powerless. But then something happened. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon Samson. The ropes on his arms became like charred flax. They snapped and fell away as if they were nothing. Samson looked around and saw the jawbone of a donkey lying on the ground. He grabbed it, and what followed was a massacre. 1,000 Philistines fell that day. 1,000 men struck down by a weapon that should have been worthless. When it was over, Samson named the place Ramath-Lehi, Jawbone Hill. He had been bound by men, but freed by God's purpose, rejected by his own people, but empowered by the Spirit. God can turn what's discarded into a weapon of victory. Even when everyone else has given up on you, he hasn't. But victory came with a cost, and Samson was about to learn what true dependence really meant. After the battle, Samson stood among the bodies of 1,000 men. His chest heaved. His hands still gripped the jawbone. The adrenaline began to fade, and then he felt it. Thirst. Not just ordinary thirst, the kind that makes your throat close, that makes your vision blur, that reminds you how fragile you really are. He had just experienced supernatural strength, divine power flowing through him like a flood. And now, in the silence after the storm, he was dying of thirst. Samson cried out to God, "You have given your servant this great victory. Must I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised?" It was a prayer of desperation, of humility, of total dependence. And God answered. As written in Judges chapter 15, God opened up the hollow place in Lehi, and water came out of it, straight from the rock itself. Samson drank, his strength returned, his spirit revived, and he named that place En-Hakkore, Spring of the Caller, a memorial to the moment when God met his need in the wilderness. This is what Samson needed to remember, what we all need to remember. Strength without dependence is just pride waiting to collapse. Power without prayer is a foundation built on sand. Only the thirsty learn what grace really tastes like. For a moment, Samson understood. God wasn't just the source of his strength. He was the source of his survival, his breath, his very life. But moments of clarity don't always last, and the next chapter of Samson's story would reveal just how quickly he could forget what he learned in the wilderness. Years passed. Samson continued to judge Israel. His reputation grew, his legend spread, but his spiritual vision, that was fading. One day Samson went to Gaza, a major Philistine city deep in enemy territory, and there he went to see a prostitute. It was reckless, arrogant, a man set apart for God, seeking pleasure in the arms of the enemy. Word spread quickly, Samson is here. The Philistines saw their opportunity. They surrounded the place and lay in wait at the city gate all night. At dawn, they whispered, "We'll kill him." They thought they had him trapped, cornered, finished. But at midnight, Samson got up. He walked to the city gates, the massive doors that protected Gaza. Gates that would take multiple men to move. Gates that symbolized the city's strength and security. And he tore them off their hinges, not just the doors, the doorposts, the bar, everything. He lifted them onto his shoulders and carried them to the top of the hill that faces Hebron, miles away. It was a statement, a display of dominance, a mockery of Philistine power. The man was unstoppable, untouchable, invincible, or so it seemed. But here's the tragedy. Samson could lift the gates of Gaza, but he couldn't lift the weight of his own desires. He could tear down the strongholds of cities, but he couldn't tear down the strongholds in his own heart. His strength was still supernatural, but his choices were becoming increasingly carnal. He was winning battles, but losing the war within himself, and he didn't even realize it. Pride has a way of blinding us to our own vulnerabilities, of convincing us that because we're strong in one area, we're invincible in all areas. Samson was about to learn the hardest lesson of his life, because the enemy he couldn't defeat wasn't waiting behind city gates. She was waiting in the valley of Sorek, and her name was Delilah, and she would do what armies could not. Samson fell in love with her, or at least he thought it was love. Maybe it was obsession, maybe it was loneliness, maybe it was the same pattern that had marked his entire life, desire overruling discernment. The Philistine rulers saw their opportunity. They came to Delilah with an offer, 1,100 shekels of silver from each of them if she could discover the secret of Samson's strength. It was a fortune, enough to secure her future forever, and so she began her work. "Tell me the secret of your great strength," she whispered. "How could someone tie you up and subdue you?" Samson played with her. He lied. "Tie me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried," he said. She did. The Philistines hid in the room. She cried out, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." He snapped the bowstrings like thread. They still didn't know. She tried again. "You made a fool of me. Now tell me how you can be tied." "Tie me with new ropes that have never been used," he said. She did. Again the Philistines waited. Again she cried out. And again Samson broke free effortlessly, a third time. "You've made a fool of me again. Tell me how you can be tied." "Weave the 7 braids of my head into the fabric on the loom," he said. She did. She fastened it with the pin. "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." He woke up and pulled away the pin and the loom. But Delilah wasn't finished. She had a weapon more powerful than ropes or bowstrings: manipulation. "How can you say, 'I love you,' when you won't confide in me?" she said. "This is the 3rd time you've made a fool of me and haven't told me the secret of your great strength." Day after day she pressed him, nagged him, wore him down until, as the Bible says, he was sick to death of it. And finally, Samson told her everything. "No razor has ever been used on my head," he said, "because I have been a Nazirite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man." Delilah knew. This was the truth. She lulled him to sleep on her lap, and while he slept, she called for someone to shave off the 7 braids of his hair. Then she called out, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." He woke up, thinking he would escape as before, but this time something was different. The Bible says it in the most devastating sentence in his entire story. He did not know that the Lord had left him. The Philistines seized him, gouged out his